Hello fellow seedlings, welcome back to my channel. It's Madison here, or Dandelion. Today we are talking about a new spiritual, witchy, magical topic. And that topic is Skyclad. What is it? When is it used? Why is it used? Everything you need to know about Skyclad. And before we get into the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, you can hit that join button below this video to get access to members-only perks, like early access to my videos, and voting in members-only polls that decide what video we're gonna make next. Let's get into the topic. So what does Skyclad mean? Skyclad basically, essentially just means nudity. Naked, no clothing. Enough said. And I've heard Skyclad explained as going before the god and the goddess as they sent you into this world. So appearing to the god and goddess in your true, natural, nude form. So let's talk about the history and background of Skyclad rituals, Skyclad magical practice. So of course, being nude or naked or Skyclad for a magical working, a spell, a ritual, a coven gathering, it's the oldest thing ever. There is evidence from cave paintings that early humans were doing this spiritual worship, these rituals, completely nude. And of course, as we evolved as early humans, we were nude, and then as we lost hair on our bodies, more and more clothing gets introduced as humanity evolves. So nudity is the original spiritual practice. Clothing is more of a societal, modern thing. Over time, more and more clothing to the point of fully clothed, which of course is the state humans have been in for a very long time now, thousands of years. But the oldest rituals that were happening in the nude, of course, obviously. So this concept of being Skyclad for rituals, nude for rituals, for spell work, for coven gatherings, it cannot be attributed to one person because nobody invented nudity. It is a very old practice. I think a lot of the time people who know nothing about witchcraft and nothing about paganism, when they think of a gathering of witches or, a coven meeting or a spell or a ritual being done by pagans or witches, I think they have this image in their mind of a bunch of naked women in the woods dancing under the moon, which isn't wrong. So this concept of practicing spirituality and witchcraft naked is very, very old. And of course, as we go through history, we get more and more clothed as a society, of course. And also on top of that, we eventually have the introduction of Christianity, which one quick little fun fact, since we're talking about Skyclad, and we're talking about now Christianity and how it impacted the Skyclad practice, early Christians actually performed baptisms naked, completely nude. So the person who was getting baptized would completely disrobe before entering the water for their baptism. So even Christians were doing magical workings in the nude. But in our more modern day society, with the effects of more modern day Christianity and the effects of society and the media and all these things, and patriarchy, of course, because it impacts everything and everyone, over time, because of all these things, we as a society have gotten scared of nudity. We've moved away from the naked body. We see the naked body as a sexual object or a sexual thing, inherently sexual, even though the human body is not inherently sexual. And this is all, because of a mixture of patriarchy and modern day Christianity. And also, honestly, colonialism and colonization. So these are all things that have mixed together to form this kind of shame surrounding the naked body, and also over-sexualization of the naked body. And as RuPaul said, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. I'm so sorry, I had to, I'm so sorry. Focus. But we as pagans don't subscribe to that idea. We know that the human body is a sacred thing. The human body is a choice that we made as souls to come down to this body, and we chose this specific body. Our soul chose the physical body we have in this incarnation. And, like we said with the explanation of what Skyclad is, it's appearing before the gods as what they created you to be, or what they sent you down to Earth to be. They sent you down to Earth in this body. So it's about stripping it all away and being completely natural and completely laid bare before the gods in your completely natural state. Which, how could there be anything wrong with that? These are our bodies. There's nothing wrong with a human body. And anyone who feels like the presence of a naked body just behaving, not doing anything sexual, is sexual. They've got some thinking to do. They've got some exploring to do within themselves. So the human body is not inherently sexual, and we as pagans know this. And we as pagans also don't shame sexuality. And even people who aren't pagan, our society is kind of starting to move toward this acceptance of the human body and this acceptance of all bodies. At least I hope that that's happening. From what I see on my corner of the internet that my algorithm shows me, seems like everyone's moving in that direction, or the majority of people. So that's a great thing. We're moving toward the desexualization of the human body, especially the female body. And this is where capitalism comes in. If you live in a capitalist country, I live in the United States, so about as capitalist as it gets. We are also taught in our society, and again, capitalism and patriarchy are all interwoven, and of course, capitalism and patriarchy only exist because of colonization. Between capitalism and patriarchy, we get this permanent messaging from our society, from our government even, that we are not good enough, that our bodies are not good enough, that there's something inherently wrong with the way you look, that your body is too big or too small, too short or too tall, that your hair is wrong, that your face is wrong, that you need to look younger, that you need to look older, that you need to look, it's constant bombardment with buy this thing, try this out. Have you heard about this? Here's this new trend about facial harmony. Oh my God, we are inundated with negative messaging about our natural state, our natural way of being, the way we were born, our naked bodies. So we have a lot of shame that's taught to us from a young age from our society that our naked body needs to be hidden or covered, or that we should be ashamed or embarrassed of our nakedness, which is so sad and so just heart-wrenching to think about the disconnect that has been forced on us between us and our bodies, us and our natural way of being. So let's talk a bit about Skyclad and its purpose, why it's used, and how it benefits a ritual or magical working. And ironically, being Skyclad, being nude for a ritual, can actually help us to look beneath the surface. It actually helps us to move away from that materialism that we get taught in our capitalist society, in our patriarchal society, that tells us you're too fat, you're too thin, you're not fit enough, you're not muscly enough, you're not toned enough, you have wrinkles, you have stretch marks, you have, whatever. We can move away from that when we return to our natural nude body. And this is partially because when we strip away the clothing and we're left bare with nothing but our body, we have to leave behind the ego. We have to leave behind that, like I said, that materialism, that focus on beauty. There's no hiding when you are nude. You are completely open and free. So nakedness can be seen as a stripping down of the human experience, especially in our modern society where everything is very materialistic. And I think another thing that can be great about practicing Skyclad is it makes it much more difficult for things to be filmed and photographed. So I think nowadays, again, in our modern society, I feel like I've said that 50,000 times, but in our modern society, with social media and things, everything is being photographed, everything is being filmed, everything is being live streamed, and I think that's great in so many ways for connecting people from different countries, different walks of life, keeping people connected and together. I think it's beautiful, and also sharing knowledge and education and experience. Awesome. But one problem that we have with that is some rituals and some spells and some spiritual practices are not meant to be viewed in that sort of way. They're meant to be in a container. They're meant to be not in a fishbowl where everyone can gather around and look. So it makes the ritual a little bit more safe, a little bit more sacred, and a little bit more secret. So Skyclad helps us to move away from these false beauty standards, these societally acceptable beauty standards. It helps us to move away from that and accept our body how it is and be grateful for this flesh prison that we've been given to have these experiences on earth, gather them all up, grow, learn, evolve, and in theory, move toward enlightenment. And like I mentioned briefly a moment ago, Skyclad practice should help you to move away from your ego. So if it's practiced properly with the right intentions, then it should help you shed the ego. And we'll get more into toward the end of the video when Skyclad can become problematic. So keep that thought, put a pin in that, and we'll return to it. But the reason why Skyclad practice or nudity in ritual or spell work can remove the ego and help you shed that ego is because there's no ritual dress. There's no elaborate outfit you're wearing. There's no trying to show off your fashion or your style or your aesthetic. Everything is stripped away. And usually with Skyclad practice, not only are you not wearing clothes, but you're not styling your hair. You're not wearing accessories or jewelry. You're not wearing makeup. So keep that in mind too. We're not just nude on the body, we're entirely nude. The body is laid bare. And some practices, some spiritual workings, nudity is essential for the practice. One of the biggest things that comes to mind when we think of rituals or magical workings that require nudity would be sweat lodges. So that's an indigenous practice. And if you want to know more about sweat lodges, then you can look that up. I'm not indigenous, so I'll leave you to explore that on your own. But these sweat lodges were, it's what it sounds like. It's a sweat lodge. So it's really hot in there. And the purpose is to, and again, I'm not indigenous, so I'm not going to claim to completely explain the purpose of a sweat lodge, but I know one of the purposes of a sweat lodge is to literally sweat it out, whatever it is. Sweat out all those toxins, sweat out anything, that isn't serving you, anything you don't need. So we can't do that if we've got clothes clinging to us. And also for safety reasons, it's really hot in there. So you want to be stripped down as much as possible. There are also certain kinds of monks who shed their material possessions, and not only their material possessions, but also their clothing. So there are monks who are sky-clad permanently, all the time, as part of their spiritual practice, because they have rejected or shed that earthly, modern human need to cover yourself. So they have shed all of their clothing, all their material possessions. And these monks will actually go into society and public naked, completely nude, as a way of practicing spiritual detachment. And I feel the need to say, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't involve other people in your spiritual work. You're not a monk. You're not a monk. If you want to go become a monk and join these monks and do that with them, then more power to you. Go right ahead. But please do not get naked and go out to the mall or go out to the grocery store or go stand on a busy street. That's a very quick way to get yourself arrested and institutionalized. So don't do that. We're talking about monks. We are not monks. And one book that comes up a lot when you start to research the concept of Skyclad is the book Aradia. It's also known as the Gospel of the Witches. And this is a book that was originally published in 1890. And it's all about this group of Italian witches. And the book suggests that they did all of their rituals and all their rites Skyclad. So if you're interested in learning about that group of witches and more about Skyclad, pick that book up. Again, that book's called Aradia, Gospel of the Witches. Gerald Gardner, who is a very well-known and popular Wiccan, he has some quotes about Skyclad practice that he is known for. And some things that Gardner says are, when you're dancing throughout ritual, if that's the kind of ritual you're doing, when you're nude, you're free. You're uninhibited. Gardner also says that when you're free of your clothing, your power cannot be inhibited. So he argues that your clothing can sometimes get in the way of your spiritual practice energetically. It can block your power. It can stifle your power. Rick Johnson, another well-known Wiccan, he also kind of plays on this concept that wearing clothing alters the energy that you're giving out. So he says that if you're completely nude, then your clothing won't alter the powerful energy that you're trying to send out. And he even includes things like glasses and contact lenses as part of this clothing that you need to shed. So I don't know what someone would do if they have really bad eyesight. I feel like you can wear your contact lenses or your glasses if you need to see. But I do think the idea, is to be completely bare. Nothing but your natural body. So I think that's where that idea comes from. But, we're towing the line between experiencing these spiritual things and trying out these concepts like Skyclad, but also taking care of our physical body and keeping one foot in reality, grounded on the earth. And one thing I think is important, I feel compelled to say, and could be wrong, but again, I feel compelled to say it, so I'm gonna. These are things said by men. Let's just throw that out there. These are things said by men, so you never know exactly where their opinion is coming from or why they have that opinion. So I think with these quotes from these two men, yes, they're prominent Wiccans, but they are men. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. You gotta, keep your eyes peeled for problematicness and questionable opinions and comments. And you have to take this information and then filter it through your own lens. So if you're a woman or a person who identifies as a woman, or even a queer person or a trans person or a non-binary person, then this becomes a little bit more complicated for you. It's not as simple as I am a man and I am a woman and I am naked. Not everything is that simple. And if we're going to be in a truly comfortable pagan environment, then all gender expressions should be more than welcomed. They should be celebrated. So I think that's important to think about too. These men, of course, their opinions are valid, informative, even, interesting to hear and help you to think about new concepts in new ways, but they are limited in their experience of the world because they are white men, cis white men. So that's where things get a little bit more complicated. So I encourage you to think about things in your own way and think about what's right for you. That kind of leads me into another thing I wanted to talk about for, again, anyone who is a woman or identifies with womanhood or being a woman, non-binary people, trans people. I think that sometimes nudity can be a touchy subject for all these groups because we feel a lot of things about our body. We've been told a lot of things about our body our whole lives by other people and by media and by society. So I think sometimes Skyclad practice can be really difficult for some people to wrap their mind around. And sometimes it's something that a person might never feel comfortable doing. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we can't perform spiritual work, magical work effectively if we don't feel comfortable. So, yes, it might be true that being laid bare before the gods, stripping away the clothing, stripping away the ego, removing all kinds of material and clothing so that your energy is not inhibited by anything. Yeah, that's all great, but that's not going to have the desired outcome of keeping your energy strong and laying you bare in a positive way so that you can work freely and openly, that's not gonna work if being naked makes you so uncomfortable. Of course, if when you're naked, you feel gross, unhappy, uncomfortable, embarrassed, ashamed, any sort of feeling like that, then maybe it's not for you. Or maybe it's something that could be a goal, something that could be worked up to. You know, I have dealt with in my life, I was a competitive dancer my whole childhood. So if you know anything about competitive dance, you already know what I'm trying to say. And I've dealt with, and still do, body dysmorphia and things like that. In the past, I've dealt with disordered eating and all kinds of stuff like that. So I completely understand. There are only very specific circumstances where I would feel comfortable being skyclad, being fully nude. And every single one of those circumstances, I'm alone. So some people do big group rituals where everyone is skyclad, which is fucking amazing. That is great. The energy of that, I'm sure, is amazing. But for me, I don't think I would ever feel comfortable being surrounded by naked people and me also being naked. And I think another thing that's important to acknowledge is if you have trauma, if you have PTSD, CPTSD, if you have experiences in your past where, you know, you were assaulted in some way, or if you have sexual abuse trauma, then skyclad could be really scary, genuinely terrifying, especially if you're in a group of people, especially a co-ed group of people where there are men and women and non-binary, trans, you know, if everybody's coming together, it can be hard to feel comfortable with, let's be honest, men. The trans people aren't the problem here. And it certainly isn't the women. So again, skyclad is great for all these reasons we're talking about, but it's also something to make sure is right for you. Make sure that you always feel safe. Make sure that you always feel comfortable and taken care of. So if you ever do have the opportunity to take part in a group ritual that is skyclad, make sure to connect with the person who's running the ritual, ask questions. There's no shame in asking questions, making sure that you know what you're in for so that you can find out if it's the right thing for you. And if you ever were to facilitate or run a group ritual that was skyclad or nude or partially nude, please do make sure that you're creating a safe environment. You want to make sure that everybody knows this is not of a sexual nature. Just because we are nude does not mean this is sexual. The point of this is to strip everything away and be our natural, laid bare selves. So that is sacred. We're not making it dirty. And also make sure that it's clear that if anyone makes anyone else uncomfortable at any point by staring too much, or God forbid, touching someone inappropriately or without consent, that person needs to leave. But from what I've heard, that pretty much never happens because the people who are at these rituals are pagans. And pagans usually, most of the time, are not that kind of person. Another thing that Gardner says about being skyclad is that when you're not wearing clothing, there are no distractions. And I saw someone say something funny about this quote, which is, clearly Gardner's not distracted by naked bodies. Because that is another important part of this topic that I wanted to discuss in today's video, which is, you know, we, again, as a society, we're not used to naked bodies in a non-sexual way, naked bodies just existing. A lot of people are uncomfortable with any kind of nudity. And we're especially not used to seeing a group of naked people. So I think sometimes for a lot of us, if you go to a skyclad ritual for the first time ever and you see all these people doing this ritual completely nude, you know, men, women, all these different gender expressions and sexualities all coming together to perform this skyclad ritual, it can honestly be really overwhelming. Like, it's kind of like, And because we're not used to it, you're kind of like afraid to look anywhere. You know, like you don't want anyone to think you're staring at them. You don't want anyone to think that you're being inappropriate or weird. But at the same time, it's like, how can you not help but kind of look at everybody? Because again, we're not used to it. And again, one thing that people talk about with Skyclad ritual is looking is okay. Looking is okay. As long as it stays in a non-creepy fashion, you know? So looking is only natural is what I see people who practice Skyclad say. You know, if you're in a group and you see, oh, this person is like, wow, they're really attractive. They're really fit. They're really healthy. Or like whatever it is you're thinking, I'm really attracted to them for XYZ reason. It's okay to glance. It's okay to admire. Then move on. And as pagans, we don't shame sexuality. We don't shame gender expression. We don't shame any of these things. So usually it's completely chill. Everyone's comfortable. Everyone is understanding what's going on. So usually people aren't freaked out by that. Again, if someone was staring, then that goes into, I feel uncomfortable. But usually that's not the case, and that would be a very rare occurrence. So know that if you were going to go to this a group Skyclad ritual, it's okay if you glance here and there, you acknowledge that looks good, that looks nice, that's ooh. But then, you know, don't be weird about it. Keep it normal. And Starhawk, another prominent figure in the spiritual community, they say that nudity encourages honesty, trust, loyalty, and bonding within a group. Which I totally understand how that would happen. Because again, there's nothing to hide. There's nowhere to hide. You're completely laid bare. And you're doing it as a group with other people. So you kind of have each other in this kind of like, oh, what's going on? We're all Skyclad. And then you do this spiritual or magical working together, and it really intensifies your connection to each other. Because it's very vulnerable. So Starhawk says, nakedness represents truth. Another point that people who practice Skyclad make is that it helps with safety. And I definitely see how that can be true. And this is because when you're Skyclad, there's no robes or dresses or skirts to trip over. There's no fabric to accidentally get caught on fire on a candle flame. So in that way, it improves safety. I saw one person say, naked people step more carefully and bang into the altars less frequently. Which makes sense. And it also says that they bang into other fellow naked people less frequently because, of course, they don't want to have the awkwardness of, oh, my naked body touched your naked body. So in that way, nudity and Skyclad practice can improve mindfulness. And again, at these Skyclad group rituals, it's important to make sure that every single person in attendance knows the boundaries of what's going on, the ground rules of what's going on, what's acceptable and what's not. So, I personally believe that Skyclad practice can be very beneficial when used safely and correctly in the proper ways. And when it's done from the heart, I guess I would say. When it's done for the right reasons. And for all the reasons we already discussed, Skyclad practice can be so beneficial for amplifying your spiritual workings, connecting with your spiritual community if you're doing a group Skyclad ritual. So many benefits to Skyclad practice. But there is most definitely a shadow side of Skyclad practice, especially in our modern day society. Again, there's that phrase, modern day society, God! But it really is true. I have seen it firsthand, and it is pretty alarming. And I'm not gonna call out any names because I'm not that kind of gal as much as I want to. But I was not at the ritual, but I once knew this person who, let's just say, is very into their spirituality, their spiritual path. I'll give them that. They're very into it. And they do have skills within their areas of expertise. Absolutely. But this is a person who's very materialistic, very ego-driven. You know, we all know those people on social media who are spiritual practitioners, or witches they call themselves, but their whole persona is ego. It's all about getting likes, getting followers, getting attention. It's all about seeming perfect and seeming beautiful and all these things and looking very obviously witchy, whatever that means. We all know these people because they're all over the internet. But I knew this person in real life and on social media. And they had quite the social media persona that they had built for themselves that had nothing to do with their actual self. And I saw that they ran an event that was Skyclad. I don't know what the event was or why, I don't know why they were gathering or what they were doing. All I know is it was Skyclad, and I saw pictures and videos from the event after the fact. And I remember being so alarmed. Like, I don't know how to describe it any other way. Because every single person, like I said, Skyclad, when practiced purely and correctly, is about shedding the ego. It's about leaving it all behind. But I found out after the fact that this was an event that basically, I don't know how to put this in any nice way because it's not nice. So trigger warning for people with body dysmorphia or, anything along those lines of body dysmorphia, trigger warning for that. But I found out, and I had this suspicion just from looking at the photos and the videos, but I found out after the fact that there was some gatekeeping on who was allowed to attend based off of their physical body and how they would look naked. So you can put 2 and 2 together there. This was a person who was having a Skyclad ritual, but they seemed to be very focused on the aesthetic of it. They wanted the people to all look good, which to them meant super skinny. So this was a ritual full of tiny, tiny women, all naked, doing whatever they were doing. I don't know what kind of ritual they were doing, but I was livid that this person would disrespect a practice like Skyclad and take it and make it all ego. Skyclad is supposed to be about shedding it all away, not walking forward naked and being like, I look better than all of you. That is not the energy of Skyclad. The energy of Skyclad is, this is my body. This is my body, and I love my body. Every single part of it. It is my home. And no one should ever, especially a person leading a ritual, nobody should ever body shame anyone. Every single body is gorgeous. Gorgeous. I'm telling you this. It is a fact. Chiseled by the gods. Like, you chose this body to come down here and have this life and have this experience in this body. Why would we shame each other for the bodies that we were given and chosen? It made me so upset because it was such a disrespectful thing to do to all the people who wanted to attend and couldn't, or all the people who thought they wanted to attend and then saw the photos and thought, oh. Because also, there was some weird racism involved also, from what I've heard and seen. Pretty much all the people there were very, very thin white women. So there was ableism involved, there was body shaming, there was, there was racism. It was just not good. It was a toxic environment practicing Skyclad. So sometimes you will come across that. You've got to be careful. And this is where I said, reach out to the people who are running the ritual. If you are thinking of attending a Skyclad ritual, reach out and say, I've got this question, this question, this question, this question. Is it safe? And then see the vibe you get back from the person and then decide if you feel safe going. Because your safety is number one. And Skyclad is supposed to be a beautiful practice of returning to your natural, basic form. It's not supposed to be ego-driven, body shaming, comparing each other. Gross. That is not spiritual practice. Okay, so ended on a little bit of an intense note, but I had to give you guys that information because I was appalled when I saw that. it was several years ago. But it still happens. I still see it every once in a while, that type of thing. So beware in that way. But know that every positive thing I said about Skyclad is still true, permanently true. You can practice Skyclad by yourself. You can practice Skyclad with a small group of friends you feel comfortable with. You can practice Skyclad with a coven. Or find an event near you that's going to be Skyclad. If you're into like that more adventurous, you feel comfortable in your body and you want to get out there and try it, go for it. It's really beneficial in so many ways. I've done solitary Skyclad practice before, and it's been really freeing and really, it really helps you get in touch with your own physical body. And then once you've done that, it helps you kind of leave it behind and transcend into that spiritual space. So it's really beautiful. Try it out on your own if you feel tentative about it, but you're interested. That is all I have to say about Skyclad practice. I hope that this gave you an understanding of what Skyclad is and why it's utilized, how it's beneficial, and also some warning signs that a Skyclad environment might not be safe. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel so I can keep making these videos. And remember, you can hit that join button to become a member of my channel if you want to be a part of the seedling community. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Blessed be.